Hey friends, this is your old pal Jono. So community engagement is an essential ingredient in building a thriving community. If you can't get your community members to come back and keep them interested and engaged, you're going to struggle to build growth and you're going to struggle to have any success. So I put together a video recently where I talked about what community engagement is, why it's important, how to measure it, how to build it. You can find a link to that video down there in the video description. However, in this video, I want to continue this theme around community engagement and talk through 4 things that you can do today, right now, to build better engagement in your community. Okay, so let's dig right in. Now, I'm a big believer that if you're going to do anything and build any new skill, you should always have a metric so you know whether you're going in the right or the wrong direction. All right, so the metric that we've got here, our goal, is that we want to build 20% DAU MAU. Okay, now if you don't know what this stands for, DAU MAU, this is daily active users over monthly active users, and I talk about what that metric is and how to calculate it in that video that I mentioned down there. Okay, so go and check that out if this is confusing you. Feel free to pause this video. We'll wait around, we'll hang out, we'll have a cup of coffee while we wait for you. Pause this video and then come back. Now, 20% is the baseline. That is kind of what you should be shooting for, but I would honestly recommend you actually shoot for 30%. I'm a big believer in stretch goals. Is if you try and go, one step further, then you might not meet that goal, but you'll probably get further than if you'd have just, reached for the 20%, for example. Okay? All right, so what are the 4 things? Let's first of all get them down on the board. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I want you to stick around to the end of the video because 4, this one, I think, is the most impactful of these 4 recommendations. Okay, so make sure you stick around for this one. You should use this one in every scenario, and the other 3 here are kind of options that you can consider in your community. All right. Now, the first one I want to focus on here is to share content regularly. All right. So think of your community as a little bit like a theme park. Like if you go to a theme park, why do you go? Well, there's attractions and rides and parades and, there's cool restaurants that you can go to. There's all kinds of things that bring you into the theme park. Your community is kind of like that. It's a meeting grounds for a group of people. If you can't keep people coming back with some attractions, they're just not going to come back, all right? So content is one method in which we can apply an attraction into our community to keep people coming back. If your community is just a bunch of questions and answers, like a lot of communities, they're boring. But if people can come back to your community and they can read and consume content that's going to help them to grow new skills, to help them to solve their problems, then they're going to keep coming back because they want to learn all of this cool new stuff, all right? Now, there's kind of 2 approaches that you've got with this content. The first is that you produce original content. So this is material that you put together for your community. Now, as you can probably imagine, this can be time consuming, it can be expensive, and you've probably got a million other things going on. So when you're building out this original content, I recommend that you focus that on what's unique to your community. So for example, if you've got a product which is a piece of software that helps you to make music, right? Maybe your original content could focus on how to use that software for creating different types of music, new features and capabilities that software is bringing out. Maybe how it integrates with certain hardware and peripherals and capabilities and things like that, all right? Focus your original content on what's unique to you. Don't try and reinvent the wheel with other material that's already out there. The other thing that you can consider when it comes to posting content in your community is shared content. So this is where you find something else that's online, that's relevant to your audience that they might be interested in, and you share that within your community, okay? So let's say, with my example of the music software, maybe you go and find a great blog post where they're reviewing kind of mixing consoles that plug into that software. You could go and share that in your community, maybe a quick summary of it, maybe take some highlights and some quotes from it and put it in there. Now, when you share content into your community, what's really important here is that you credit the original author. Don't just go and take it and pass it off as your own, because you're a scumbag if you do that. And you're not a scumbag. I know you're not a scumbag. You're a nice person. You like long walks on the beach. You like to pet small animals. At one point, you carried a kitten in a very small purse. You're a good person, all right? So make sure you credit the original person. But this is a very powerful way of bringing people back. If every week there's new content, it builds engagement, especially when you get people to go and discuss that content and participate in it and enjoy it, okay? Now, the second thing you might want to consider here is to kick off weekly chats All right? Now, what I mean by this is that every week you kick off a discussion and it can be potentially themed in some nature. So continuing my example of the community that's wrapped around the product where you can record music, maybe you could kick off a discussion next week where you say, hey, why don't we all have a conversation about what kind of music we're making with our software? And maybe people can share some MP3s of some example music that they've made with it. Another example could be where you kick off a discussion saying, hey, what do people recommend when it comes to learning how to apply audio compression into your songs? Another example could be, hey, let's have a conversation about the most effective guitar amp modeling tools that you use with your productions, whatever it might be, okay? But you kick off a discussion, and the goal here is that you want to create this kind of feedback loop, right? You know, this is the feedback loop where, you know, somebody posts something, somebody replies to it, somebody posts something again, somebody replies to it, and it kind of goes round, and that gets people posting and engaging and spending time, all right? So that's the second thing I want to recommend. The third thing you might want to consider here is to run a group meeting. Now, this is something I used to do an awful lot when I was working in some of the previous companies where I used to work full-time, like Canonical is a good example in the Ubuntu community. We used to run meetings all the time in our community, which is kind of like a meeting that you might have at work. But the goal is that we get the community together and we discuss a particular project or a particular topic, right? Now, there's a couple of things you're going to need here. The first thing is you're going to need a topic. So let's say, for the sake of argument, somebody in the community says, hey, we've got this software for producing music that everybody's excited about in our community. Wouldn't it be really cool if we had a big database of equipment that works really well with our software, right? If a community member says, you know, I think it would be cool to have that list of, you know, if you buy a piece of hardware, piece of equipment, and you want to know whether it works with the platform, then you can easily go and look it up, all right? So that seems like a pretty cool idea. So maybe what you can then do is pull a meeting together and say, hey, everyone, we're going to have a conversation about coming together to build a tool, a database of equipment. If you're interested in this, come and join us. So a bunch of people will join you, and I'd recommend you have this meeting in a real-time platform. Something like Slack or Discord is a great way to do it. You might even want to have it on Zoom if you want to have more of an audio-video kind of meeting. But what happens is you say, this is the topic. And then what happens is people come in and you discuss the topic and brainstorm and come up with all kinds of ideas. But what's essential when you do this is you need to have some kind of outcome, right? So for example, somebody might come into the meeting and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a search box where you could search the database? Well, what you might want to say is, okay, well, who in this community knows a software developer who might be able to build this? Do we have any existing developers in the community? Maybe one person says, actually, I've written some code. I'd be happy to help with this. And maybe say, okay, well, would you be willing to take an action where you'll go away and maybe come up with just a simple plan for a first version of this database? And that person says, yeah, that sounds great. Say, okay, well, why don't we reconvene in 2 weeks? Maybe you can come back and present what you've created with the rest of the group, and then we can check it out. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about when it comes to an outcome. If you bring a bunch of people together for a meeting and nothing happens at the end of it, you know, if there's no plans, there's no next steps, there's no actions, people get bored of that and they move on, right? But if you facilitate that meeting really effectively, you can get phenomenal results. This is a really dynamic way of not just getting a lot of engagement, but it's a great way to make your community feel involved in building something that everybody can benefit from. And this is, you know, the open source movement is founded on this principle of people coming together to build things. You can absolutely apply it in some way to your community as well. All right? Now, what is this mystery fourth one here? Well, this is something that you should do right now to literally every community that you may have participated in. Whether you're a member, whether you're a facilitator, this is super important, okay? And it's gonna sound obvious, but it can be hard to do, but it's gonna guarantee that you're gonna get better engagement in your community. So it is this, is that you respond to everything, right? Now, I know what you're thinking, what do you mean respond to everything? So imagine somebody comes into your community and they say, hey, my name is Jono, I'm brand new to the community, you know, I'm really excited to be here, just wanted to say hi. Go and respond. Imagine you post a piece of content. Somebody says, hey, I tried that thing in the content, it was pretty cool, thanks for posting it. Go and respond. You post a piece of content, somebody goes in there and they say, you know what, I disagree with that content that you shared. I think this element of it was wrong or incorrect. Go and respond. Imagine someone comes and joins your group meeting and they say, hey, I built this thing that we talked about in the meeting. Go and respond. Okay? Every time someone posts anything into your community, respond in some way. The reason why is because we as human beings, we need validation. I don't care whether you are somebody who is out there sweeping the street. I don't care whether you're a janitor, whether you're a nurse, whether you are a lawyer, whether you're a president, whether you are a software engineer, whether you are a stay-at-home mom or dad. I don't care. Every single person in the world needs validation. We all need to know that we're seen, we're heard, we're on the right track. And we need to do the same thing in our community. If we provide validation and recognition to other people, they're more likely to come back. A simple way in which you can do this in your community is to like the thing that they posted. Somebody goes in there, they post something, you give it a quick like. This is happening right now. I'm running this thing called the Community Ignition Workshop. It's a completely free workshop that I'm running. 4 sessions are included in it where I kind of walk through how to build or optimize a community. I like to do this, I'm actually running the first one right now, but I'm going to be running it more regularly. And I've got a bunch of people going into the little mini community in there, sharing their thoughts, their opinions, and I put a like on as many of them as I can. If I see it, I give it a like, okay? So it just makes people feel seen, it makes people feel heard. A bunch of people have reached out to me and said, you know what, John, I appreciate that you like my thing. I feel like this is an interactive relationship. That's what you want, all right? Another thing that you can do here is to leave a comment, is to go and reply to the thing, right? The post that they shared. Go and say, hey, that sounds really interesting, or, I appreciate you sharing that, or, if somebody shares an idea about something, then maybe you say, oh, that sounds really interesting, but can you share a little bit more about what you were talking about in that particular idea? You want to try and keep that conversation going, make that person keep coming back and engaging. If somebody goes and posts something in the community, they get no response, what do you think their response is going to be? They're going to probably move on and go and do something else, right? That's going to suck for them. So keep responding to everything. And while you do this, I strongly encourage, the irony of this, I strongly encourage that you encourage, okay? Be supportive, be encouraging to everybody who comes into your community. If you post a piece of content and someone posts something that says, you know what, I disagree with it, follow up with them and say, you know what, I know that you probably felt a little bit anxious, kind of pushing back potentially, but I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you sharing some critical feedback. This is the only way in which we get better. It's the only way in which we improve. Thank you. If you kick off a weekly chat and somebody goes and shares a recommendation for a piece of equipment that works with this sound engineering software, say, thank you so much for sharing. It's those kinds of contributions, sharing it with our broader community, that makes our community wonderful. Thank you for being a part of this. That kind of encouragement is something you should be having at every step of the way in your community. So if you go through these 4 things, if you share content regularly, if you kick off those weekly chats, if you run a group meeting, and if you respond to everything, I promise you this is all going to help you hit or get you further towards hitting these goals of DAU and MAU. And again, if you don't know what that is, go and check out the video in the description down there. All right, that's it. I hope you found this useful. As is always the case, my door is nailed open. I love to hear feedback from you lovely people. If you've got any questions, got any feedback, let me know. See you in the next one.